Hello, and with us we have Ambassador Anand Triganan, advisor of Cox, and we would like to start the questions. So, how would you assess the security situation in the global south today?
Well, unfortunately, the global south has been the playfield of the superpowers. And it's not from now, it's been there for centuries and it has continued. So, any conflict that you look at, there you will find the superpowers playing their games, be it Russia, be it USA, be it China, all these major powers that are playing. Then you have the regional powers also. They are also now militarizing their policies, and we have seen in different part of the world. At the same time, security, when we look at it, should not only be security in the physical sense of the term, or traditionally that we are looking at it. We have to look at the security in terms of food security, in terms of energy security, in terms of economic security, in terms of developmental paradigms and the developments of security. So the fundamentals for the existence in these countries need to be addressed. And that's the reason that there is an approach that countries like India are adopting, that they're focusing on this. And precisely to deal with that, the international community had agreed that there will be a Millennial Development Goals and then the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which is supposed to be completed by 2030. But we are not looking at that anymore. There was no focus because of the three black swan events that we saw, the pandemic and others. The total focus changed completely. So the amount of funding that you required, amount of technology that you needed from the rest of the world, and there was no focus. Even in those countries where there are internal problems of corruption, there is the problem of coup d'etats, there are problems of conflicts between the countries, within the society. Now, those are all creating uncertain and insecure situations. So, therefore, in order to ensure a security, I think that there has to be a very holistic approach. On the other hand, what we are looking at is that around us, the major powers are going more into a protectionist mode, right? They want to have these hegemonistic approaches. If you are with me, then only I'll look after you. That is the kind of a thing that will be world will become far more insecure. Already we are having a major conflicts which is going on Russia-Ukraine war for more than 3 years. The impact of the pandemic is still not over. Then we have this Middle East war, which is also threatening to escalate further. Only a few days ago, we saw some kind of a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. But today we are having a problem in Syria, which is again woken up. But there again, the big powers are involved. So the security situation in global south, to say the least, is very, very precarious. Despite many efforts, despite several countries trying to help them. And we see Sudan. You look at Sudan, South Sudan, and Sudan already internal dissension. You have problems between Egypt and Ethiopia. You are having problem between Iran and Israel. I mean, there are these flashpoints that can create a terrible situation. Now, anything happens in the Middle East, for example, will also have a direct impact on India. Today, India's economy is the fastest growing. India is the largest democracy, the most populous country, and everything is fine going for us. But tomorrow, if the Middle Eastern war conflagrates, the whole thing, then you will be facing a very direct consequence of it. And that will have direct impact on our energy security, our economic security, our security of the expatriates. We have about 10 million people, and those 10 million people are remitting about 60 to 70 billion dollars a year to you, which is nearly a one tenth of our foreign exchange reserves. So this is a security which is in a way I was very fragile and needs to be fragility needs to be reduced by international collaboration, cooperation. We have not talked about the insecurities created due to the climate change, or for that matter, due to terrorism. Those are other factors that impact on the security of the nations. You have seen what is happening in Red Sea. The Houthis are attacking them, and then the shipping has been affected. The cost of doing business, international business, has gone up. So all those factors are causing insecurities apart from the day-to-day things that we see in countries, and then the people's aspirations are not met, and you have problems like what we saw in Bangladesh. So this is something which is happening all across. Afghanistan is still not settled, Yemen, and I mean the multiple hotspots and theaters today which do not provide a very good picture of a secured world.
So, continuing on what you mentioned, how do you think the global south is positioned amid the Ukraine war, the Red Sea crisis, and the Gaza conflict?
You see, the global south took a very varied stance depending on who are you aligned with. Now, Russia, obviously, as you know, has been trying to engage a bit more in the global south, trying to take up their cause directly and through the BRICS. China, which is also a collaborator of Russia in many ways, they have a no limit partnership, has also greater influence on the global south. India is the voice of the global south. But what happened is you can judge one way or the other is that how did they vote in the United Nations on the issues that came up, for example, in the UNGO. So large number of countries in the global south, they have been voting for Palestine, for example. Some have voted for the Russia-Ukraine war. They condemned Russia, some countries did because of the historic reasons, but the others did not. You know, many countries in the Middle East, for example, condemned the Russian aggression, but they did not join the sanctions. So even in our neighborhood, if you see South Asia, four countries condemned, the four countries abstained on this. So there was a varied picture of their taking positions depending on the relationship, number one, and number two, the hypocrisy of the West. Basically, why? Because the same kind of thing that Russia is doing into Ukraine has been done by the United States in Iraq, in Libya, in Afghanistan, in different countries. So you can't have dual standards to judge people or countries or leaders on these kind of issues. So I think that we have been there have been varying choices, but broadly the country sympathizes with the Russian concerns on security, not necessarily with their approach of violating the UN Charter as the people perceive. Although Russia says that this was to defend their country and it is provided under the UN Charter, but to an outsider, it appears as if there was a violation of the UN Charter.
So on 1st of December, Donald Trump tweeted about stricter sanctions on the BRICS nation if a new currency is introduced. And what could this mean to the global south?
Well, not only global south, it will have a problem in the global. You see, I mean, let's go back a little bit. We are talking only about wars, but let's look at the impact of these wars. What are the war teaching us? For example, and we need to learn from every adversity. We saw that United States, as a part of its sanctions regime, tried to cut Russia out of SWIFT, right, system, whereby you can transfer funds and all. Secondly, it confiscated about the Western countries, and including the US, about $360 billion that Russia had. It led to weaponization of other three Fs, which is food, fertilizer, and fuel, by Russia as a response. So you have a vertical division there. Now, when you are cut out of a system or shut out of a system, then what do the other countries do? They try to find some other means of trading with each other and therefore resort to national currencies. I have rupees, you have a dirham. India has signed in the UPI under the UPI agreement and rupee and ruble trade or rupee dirham trade or rupee real trade with different countries. With about 20 countries, we have this kind of arrangement. Russia and China, which have about $200 billion trade, they are transacting 92% in their national currencies. So this is a natural, I would say, the step that any country would do. You remember the barter system used to be there earlier. Right? You have goods, we exchange the goods, then the currency came. So today, now everybody is talking about digital currency. But why Trump mentioned what he did was because de-dollarization as it is perceived today, number one, it's not going to happen immediately. It'll take many, many years. They still control about 70 to 80%. Plus, as a reserve currency, as a psychological currency, US dollar still holds a very good place, even though it is no longer supported by gold. But the other countries are also looking at how to evolve a new kind of a system. So as Putin said that this is not against dollar, our BRICS currency or BRICS digital currency or BRICS new mechanism and all that. But it is being perceived in the Western media as if, and possibly it could become over time. But I don't see that many countries are currently looking that dollar versus this. So I think over time, once the global economic system, which is currently also in a churn, like the political system, settles down, there will be a certain kind of a conversation between these two mechanisms because you can't just uh, isolate one or the other. So I think President Trump has warned that if there is something to displace dollar, then he will use tariffs. And the tariffs is one buzzword that he loves, and he is saying from day one that he'll impose this and that. But I think it will be useful for him to introspect that exactly what has led to this kind of perception in the rest of the world about this. So if the US administration thinks about it, perhaps it will take certain corrective measures because I don't think that global south wants to isolate itself from dollar or anything else.
So, so do you think the US and the Europe view the global south as a unified entity?
I don't think so. They all have very different approaches. United States, they all look at it, the global south, as because very many of them have been colonizing powers. So the colonizing mindset has still not gone away, number one, among those countries. They might say something. So how they now project it, they project it in terms of human rights violations, in terms of lack of democracy, in terms of institutional deficit, corruption. So all kinds of extraterritorial things they bring into the development of this. And that's the difference between the way, let's say, National Development the New Development Bank, the BRICS is brought about. It's a value neutral investment and assistance that they are providing. We don't cast aspersions on them because each country's socio-economic history is very different. So I think that that is the Western paradigm, which is clear. We know that. On the other hand, the US policy towards the global south is driven by what Russia and China are doing, not necessarily what are the requirements of the global south are. And that's where the West comes into picture, right? The whole of them that become one kind of a thing. Okay, we have to stop China or stop Russia, and tomorrow if India become far too big, then stop India from monopolizing that space. And that's the difference in approaches. Whereas countries like India, when we talk of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one health, one family, one future, or one world, one family, one future, like that is something that we are looking for the whole world. It is not exclusively for A country or B country or for our own benefit. Because unless the whole country develops, I mean, all our policies, neighborhood first, Act East, Act West, Link West, whatever it is, all those policies are geared to creating partnerships that are mutually sustaining. And that's not the case with them. Everything is conditional. China is coming up with its own model, which is debt diplomacy, the bull warrior diplomacy, which is also creating problems for them. So I think that there is a clear difference between the way, at least I can say, India approaches the global south, being the voice of the global south, focusing on their real concerns, and the way the rest of the world does.
That's it for today. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
great
Thank you.
insights.
Thank you very much.